Welcome to Esoteric-Truth on Esoteric-Truth Radio. My name is Trinity, and the first thing that I'm going to present here is something that's controversial, something that's hard for many, many people to believe. And this may be an actual trilogy. So if you could just bear with me here, the first part will, of course, be some of the older sciences, things that have been going on for 500 plus years. This is about mind control, subliminal messaging, MK Ultra, Artichoke, Bluebird, you name it. I'm going to present it. For those of you who are not actually open to this, please be patient. Please understand that the things that I'm going to bring up here are things that you can actually research. If I bring up a book, I will definitely give you the name of the book. You can look up anything that I'm actually going to present today. You can find it. It's all readily available and easily accessible. You will have some pauses during this, and it's just because I have so much information to present that I guarantee you're going to want to stick around. But I do have a lot of information to present. I'm going to try to do as much as I possibly can in a short time. I want to give an absolute shout out to those that have literally been spending countless years trying to present this information. Um, this is a hard subject for people to understand uh, because we have so many others out there, propagandists, we have movies, we have television, we have all of those things. Those are the things that are controlling us, but those are actually the things that are telling you that this can't happen to you, that this never really happened. They want to push this stuff under the table, and I am here to tell you that it's out. It's out in the open, and it's happening to every one of us, including myself. I have absolutely no problem saying that I have at one time been susceptible to a lot of these techniques, and it's taken me many years to try to find out the essence of controlling a human being, and it's a lot easier than you actually think. Um, I can't give their names out, so I will give their initials. MS is somebody that I would like to give a shout out to, and T2012. There are a lot of other people, but I'm going to stick with those two right now because they were a huge part in helping me to realize that I wasn't the only one that thought this was a serious subject. Um, the earliest evidence of mind control was a surgical procedure called trephining. And here they would cut a small hole in your skull. And if they thought that you were possessed by evil spirits or demons, this was an early form of lobotomy. You have to realize that there's no practice that's happening right now that has not been done or tried, whether it failed or not. It was actually tried over the last 500 years. Even something, and these barbaric procedures, by the way, are happening today. We just named it differently. That's a horrible habit that we all seem to have, and we don't know how to associate the two. Um, Multiple personality disorder today would have been considered possession 100 years ago, and due to many, and I mean many, of the tyrants that were obsessed with power, that are currently obsessed with power, there's no greater power than to control a person. Many times we think that this is impossible. It is. How we treat our children, how we treat animals. We all have a natural trait of wanting to control one another or control our surroundings. And what's fascinating about that is that we are also easily controllable. It really doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a long period of time. And due to the practices happening for so long and a lot of the information that's hidden to the public, because this stuff, like I said, I mean, you could do a search, um, but you're going to find so many pieces of information, you're not going to know where to start. So this is how I'm going to help. I'm going to bring up certain things. A lot of these books are currently available. You can find the PDFs online. If it's a PDF, I say download it and read it. I'm going to bring up a lot of the, at least the older, more easily accessible links and or stories and or information. My first part will be about stuff that actually happened long ago. My second part will be what's happening now, because this stuff is happening now from still people thinking that there's witches and, just a ton of shit, a ton of shit. And then the last part will be how to help yourself to get out of it. I think that the reason why I wanted to make that the third part is because that's the hardest part for you to comprehend. But if I don't bring you the beginning and then the middle and then the end, I could take the third part and just say, oh, well, shit, we can't do anything about it. I'm not going to do that. I actually want the last part to be something that when you do turn on the television and you do turn on the radio and you open up a magazine and you want and you have a feeling of wanting something that you can't really pinpoint why you want it. I want to tell you how you feel that way, but who got you to feel that way? People have spent so much time, and I mean literally the horrific things that were done to humans on this planet. Forget what we do to animals. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't give a shit about that. What I'm saying is that forget what you think uh, of the most horrific thing. I'm going to find a way to tell you it's tenfold. It's tenfold. And the further you go back, the worse it was. But that this is absolutely happening today. We're doing it at more or less in a pharmaceutical sense. We're drugging everyone, our food, every single. There is not one thing that I'm not going to present here that doesn't show you that we are literally on the brink of being under full control. And there's nothing that we can actually do about it unless we actually see the signs. Okay, I'm not telling you, oh, something's going on the air, so don't breathe, or there's shit in your food, don't eat. That's impossible. That's impossible. But if somebody actually tells you, I can tell you a way to at least diminish that, that thing that's going to actually, completely screw you up, then I'm going to do that. That's what I want to bring here. So please bear with me. I'm going to pause for a second so that I have all my links available. I want to make sure that I'm quoting everybody properly, that all the information that I'm bringing up, I have researched myself. I will bring the pertinent parts, the most important parts to the table. This is not to scare you. This is not fear mongering. This is nothing in that sense. Um, we've had presidents that have apologized for mind control. Um, there's, I'm sure, at least one person in your lifetime that's a much older person that told you some stories that you thought were just unbelievable. That shit is real, and it's been real. And unless we actually say that we're gonna at least be knowledgeable, screw it. If you can't stop it, that's fine. But at least, come to the fight with something. Come to the fight with something. Don't go to a knife fight. You know what I mean? With a pencil. Don't go to a gunfight with a knife. There's ways for us to actually prevent these things, and I want to be able to present that to you. This is going to be hard to swallow for a lot of people, and I get it. I absolutely get it. But you want some truth? Stay with me. I'm like I said, this is going to be a couple of parts, but stay with me on this. I promise you. After listening to everything that I am going to present, you will walk away with something. You will walk away with something. So I'm going to pause for a second, get all my links out, and I'll be back in a minute. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to start with somebody who was very important in a lot of high profile cases, such as the Patty Hearst case, and nobody brings her up. The Patty Hearst case, of course, was a famous case where I think it was a billionaire's daughter. She got kidnapped, and then all of a sudden she's on some crime spree. And that's where we get a lot of the terminology that we still use today, such as Stockholm Syndrome, where all of a sudden we fall in love with our captors, which, let me tell you something, is a real thing. And hopefully later on, you stick around, you're going to find out that we all have a form of Stockholm Syndrome. And we use it to fight each other. We want to go into the political paradigm, and we don't see that it's just one system with two different names. It's a form of division that teaches us that we have to choose a side. Picking a side or picking the lesser of two evils is still evil. That doesn't make any sense, but people have a tendency to follow it and want to argue about it. We spend a lot of time just literally dividing ourselves more and more every day, and it's not because we're born Republican or Democrat or gay or straight or religious or the non. It's that we're taught that way. And if people would just understand and it's not that hard, whether it's your parents that taught it to you, or you could be like Nell from that movie with Jodie Foster, be in the fucking woods your whole life. It doesn't matter. We are literally taught to be who we are today. Her name is Margaret Vale Singer. Um, she died some years back, but I'm going to read you some of her terminologies and a short overview of what it is that she was discussing. It says, today's mind control of brainwashing in academia is commonly referred to as coercive persuasion, coercive psychological systems, or coercive influence. The short description below comes from Dr. Margaret Singer, professor at the University of California at Berkeley, the acknowledged leading authority in the world on mind control and cults. Coercion is defined by the American Heritage Dictionary as to force to think or think in a certain manner, to dominate, restrain, or force or control by force, to bring about by force. Coercive psychological systems are behavioral change programs which use psychological force in a coercive way to cause the learning and adoption of an ideology or designated set of beliefs, ideas, attitudes, or behaviors. The essential strategy used by the operators of these programs is to systematically select, sequence, and coordinate many different types of coercive influence, anxiety, and stress producing tactics over continuous periods of time. In such a program, the subject is forced to adapt in a series of tiny invisible steps. Please listen to this. Tiny invisible steps. Each tiny step is designed to be sufficiently small so the subjects will not notice the changes in themselves or identify the coercive nature of the processes being used. The subjects of these tactics do not become aware of the hidden organizational purpose of the coercive psychological program until much later, if ever. These tactics are usually applied in a group setting by well-intentioned but deceived friends and allies of the victim. This keeps the victim from putting up the ego defenses we normally maintain in known adversarial situations. The coercive psychological influence of these programs aim to overcome the individual's critical thinking abilities and free will, apart from any appeal to informed judgment. Victims gradually lose their ability to make independent decisions and exercise informed consent. Their critical thinking, defenses, cognitive processes of values, ideas, attitudes, conduct, and ability to reason are undermined by a technological process rather than by meaningful free choice, rationality, or the inherent merit or value of the ideas or propositions being presented. How do they work? The tactics used to create undue psychological and social influence often means involving anxiety and stress fall into seven main categories. Tactic 1 increases suggestibility and soften up the individual through specific hypnotic or other suggestibility increasing techniques such as extended audio, visual, verbal, or tactical fixated drills. Excessive exact repetition of routine activities, sleep restriction, and or nutritional restriction. Right there. That right there. Extended audio, visual, verbal, or tactical fixation drills. That's our 24-hour news cycles with the marquee going on the bottom. The constant and repeated words that are used by all news stations. There's plenty of videos that you can put in there and say, the media says all the same shit. And you can actually see them using the exact, and I'm talking about all over the United States. You will hear the exact same words used by people from New York to Los Angeles. News stations using the exact, same words so that they're so repetitive that you can't really get out of it. You can't. Or tactical fixation drills, like when we had the terror drills, we had yellow and red and green. And all of that stuff is to purposely keep you fixated on fear. So every time they put it up, they put it down, they're like, oh, we're a terror alert, blah, blah, blah. None of that shit makes sense. All that is to keep you on a constant high and low. And when you do that, it goes into the next part, the sleep restriction or nutritional restriction. That means that now you're worried, you're terrified, you can't go to sleep, you don't know why you're scared. All of this stuff is purposely done. And of course, I don't even have to get into the nutritional restriction because we already know where our food is going. Just the first tactic alone, every single one of those things is happening right now. All of those things are happening to us one by one. It's happening to us in a group. We share that fear. Right now, I'm bringing this up, and there's people that will be interested and people that won't. But all in all, we're still gathering to find out what the hell is going on. You know, there's people that are worried about the zombie apocalypse. There's people worried about the end of the world. There's people worried about the rapture. Everybody's worried. We're worried about the Antichrist. It's always some shit. Worried about sunspots and alien invasion. I mean, what the hell? How the hell are we supposed to live, sleep, and do all of these other things when we can't get out of the worry zone? You can't uh, go and look automatically to the Love Channel. There isn't a Love Channel. You can find 500 things on TV. There isn't a Love Channel where it's just puppies and kittens in baskets and shit. You can't do that because that will take you away from the fear. They have to keep you scared, and you have to be scared all the time. Number 2, establish control over the person's social environment, time, and sources of social support by a system of often excessive rewards and punishments. Awesome that they said that, because our social environment is no longer family gatherings or places where we can all interact as people. We're doing it on the internet. We're doing it on Facebook. We're doing it on threads. We're doing it on posts. And the rewards and the punishments. That's right there. You write something, and somebody either has a positive or a negative response. But it's either going to make you happy or it's going to piss you off. And here I'm going to finish reading. Social isolation is promoted. Contact with family and friends is abridged, as is contact with persons who do not share group approved attitudes. Economic and other dependence on the group is fostered. I know I don't have to go into that. That is pretty much self-explanatory. Tactic 3, prohibit disconfirming information and non-supporting opinions in group communications. Again, this is what's actually happening all over the internet. This is what's happening. I've seen a couple of people that I know complain now that you can't go on certain news media sites anymore without logging in your full name and your email address. Now they want to find out if you're pissed off and you're like, screw the economy, screw the government, take this shit over. Everybody's, bonkers in Washington. They want to know who the hell you are. They want to know how the hell to find you. They want to know where the discontent is coming from so they can shut that shit down. Rules exist about permissible topics to discuss with outsiders. Communication is highly controlled, and in-group language is usually constructed. Self-explanatory. Number 4, make the person reevaluate the most central aspects of his or her experience of self and prior conduct in negative ways. Efforts are designed to destabilize and undermine the subject's basic consciousness, reality awareness, worldview, emotional control, and defense mechanisms. The subject is guided to reinterpret his or her life's history and adopt a new version of casualty. Again, if they don't teach you either how to live, what you should be looking forward to, then they're not doing their job. There isn't one person, including myself. I would love to have better things and live in a bigger house and have all this other shit. That's fine. Having things is one thing, but us leaving out our basic nature, our basic inner nature, and our basic wanting to be a community, every time we take away from that to go for material things, it's easier for them to control us. That's why we're bombarded with commercials, bombarded with subliminal messaging, bombarded with movies that are just nonstop propaganda. Nobody's discussing the real issues. We're fighting about Jay-Z and the Illuminati and what's that shit I saw the other day? Dennis Rodman is going to who the hell told anybody that Dennis Rodman should be back into the news? He hasn't played basketball. He's played for this dude in North Korea. You fucking kidding me? This is what we need to be talking about? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's a form of distraction. And for those of us that are listening here, if you're hearing my voice, that means you're tired of the bullshit. You no longer want to hear that nonsense. You know that even if you participate, even if you have a conversation at a dinner at your family's house this weekend, and somebody brings up the Dennis Rodman thing, you're either going to be for it or against it. Regardless, you're talking about it. And that's what they want. They want you guys to interact about nonsense because the real shit is right under our noses. It's right there in black and white. They need us to be distracted. Okay, sorry, I told you this is going to be a three-parter, but I have to be who I am, and this is it. Okay, let's see. Tactic 5. Create a sense of powerlessness by subjecting the person to intense and frequent actions and situations which undermines the person's confidence in himself and his judgment. That right there is mainstream media. Right off the bat. Right off the bat. It's not even the communication you're having with other people. It's that it's constantly in your face. You know, this whole thing, if voting counted, they wouldn't let us do it. Are you kidding me? We can't control GMOs, but for some reason we think that we're the reason or not the reason somebody's in office. That's to me that's fucking bonkers that people still think that that shit counts. It does not count. It's never counted. It's just another form of division. Tactic 6. Create strong aversive emotional arousals in the subject by use of non-physical punishments, such as intense humiliation, loss of privilege, social isolation, social status changes, intense guilt, anxiety, manipulation, and other techniques. To me, this brings up the hive mind when we're all supposed to agree. You know, I'm supposed to agree with you, you're supposed to agree with someone else. And then when we go outside of that and we say, no, we don't want to listen to that nonsense. I don't want to talk about sports all day. I don't want to talk about politics all day. None of that shit makes sense to me. And what does make sense is that it's there to divide. Uh, I have to argue. You know, I don't want to tell people why I don't want to talk about it. I just don't. But I don't have to explain. I don't have to label myself, and I don't have to talk to people that label themselves and give themselves higher status because they read, the newspaper every day. That doesn't make you more intelligent. Having a college degree doesn't make you smarter than anybody else. You know, I'm not knocking anybody who went to college, but you can't walk around and just read from a textbook that you don't know where the information came from, and that the place where you learn how to memorize this shit um, you don't even know who wrote it. So to me, you have no real say. Okay. Tactic 7, and this is the last one. Intimidate the person with the force of group sanctioned secular psychological threats. For example, it may be suggested or implied that failure to adopt the approved attitude, belief, or consequent behavior will lead to severe punishment or dire consequences, such as physical or mental illness, the reappearance or of a prior physical illness, drug dependence, economic collapse, social failure, divorce, disintegration, failure to find a mate, etc. Don't have to get into that at all. Every single one of us listening have dealt with that. All of us. And this isn't just the government, and this isn't just your neighbor. This is at churches. This is at how you call it, every self help conference. This is at every pyramid scheme. You know, oh, you can't find a mate. It's because you're not doing it. No, nobody gives a shit about that stuff. Uh, well, obviously, that's my mistake. Everybody cares about it, and this is why those people are making billions of dollars. These tactics of psychological force are applied to such a severe degree that the individual's capacity to make informed or free choices become inhibited. The victims become unable to make the normal, wise, or balanced decisions which they most likely normally would have. They have been unknowingly manipulated by these coordinated technical processes. The effect of these processes can be an even more effective form of undue influence than pain, torture, drugs, or use of the physical force and physical and legal threats. How does coercive psychological persuasion differ from other kinds of influence? Coercive psychological systems are distinguished from benign social learning or peaceful persuasion by the specific conditions under which they are conducted. These conditions include the type and number of coercive psychological tactics used, the severity of environmental and interpersonal manipulation and the amount of psychological force employed to suppress particular unwanted behaviors and to train desired behaviors. Coercive force is traditionally visualized in physical terms. In this form, it is easily definable, clear cut, and unambiguous. Coercive psychological force, unfortunately, has not been so easy to see and define. The law has been ahead of the physical sciences in that it has allowed that coercion need not involve physical force. It has recognized that an individual can be threatened and coerced psychologically by what he or she perceives to be dangerous, not necessarily by that which is dangerous. Law has recognized that even the threatened action need not be physical. Threats of economic loss, social ostracism, and ridicule, among other things, are all recognized by law in varying contexts. Why are coercive psychological systems harmful? Coercive psychological systems violate our most fundamental concepts of basic human rights. They violate rights of individuals that are guaranteed by the First Amendment to the United States Constitution and affirmed by many declarations of principle worldwide. By confusing, intimidating, and silencing those victims, those who profit from these systems evade exposure and prosecution for actions recognized as harmful and which are illegal in most countries, such as fraud, false imprisonment, undue influence, involuntary servitude, intentional infliction of emotional distress, outrageous conduct, and other torturous acts. These, like I said, are things that are right there out in the open. It's fully every single thing that I just mentioned, at least one thing each of us has had to deal with. And when we're surrounded by these people, it's even more stressful because we know what's going on. We know the reason why people act the way that they do, or at least I'm going to present that. And when you start seeing that they have us, they got us right now. They're not going to let go. Out of everything that I've read over all of these years, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to present later on today, all of these things have one thing in common, and it's that those who are trying to get out of that system are the minority. I think we're always going to be the minority. I don't think that even if we got 1 million people, that we would be able to make a difference. I know that sounds really fucked up, but in all actuality, when you think about this, people cannot accept that they can be taken advantage of. You know, we're always going to bump into those people. Oh, that shit can't happen to me. I know when something's happening. No, you don't know shit. I mean, when you've realized how long this has been going on, we're literally being lobotomized right now, and you don't even have to go to the doctor to have it done anymore. You know, they did their work. They found out how easily we can be used. I'll be bringing up Freud, Edward Bernays, books, everything that you can possibly think of. I will present it all, and it's going to be out there in the open. So just bear with me, and I'll be back in a second. Okay. Hi, this is Trinity, and welcome back to Esoteric Truth on Esoteric Truth Radio. This is the second half of my mind control series, and I wanted to be sure that I threw in the fact that the reason why I chose this to be my first show is because, to me, once you begin to understand how this works and how every single person on the planet has one component that attaches all of us together, you begin to be able to see everything in a completely different light. I wrote a paper not too long ago, and I really got some shit for it because everybody wanted to take it the wrong way. But a lot of people fear in knowing their inner selves. And I don't mean it in a new agey way or anything like that. I'm talking about just seriously understanding how you work. Same way that a mechanic knows all details about cars, and people that build computers understand every component and piece that goes into it and how it works. If you understand this just one important part, then you're ahead of the game. Right off the bat, you're ahead of the game. You do not have to be a scientist. You don't have to be an anthropologist. You don't have to be a brain surgeon or a fucking NASA a NASA astronaut. None of that stuff applies here. None of it. You need to understand one part of our brain, and you have to understand what it is that is being controlled and how it's being controlled. When you realize that this is within all of us, then you'll start to understand how we're being mind controlled, how we're being brainwashed, how it was this easy. People want to walk around and say, "Oh, this can't happen to me." Yeah, it happened. It happened to you. Just the fact that you think it didn't happen to you proves that it happened to you. That's how I mean, it sounds stupid, but in reality that's really how it is. Okay? And this is called the reptilian brain. Do not confuse it with reptilian shapeshifters or reptilian people that live on the ground and they're eating people. And I really need for anybody listening to this to understand that this is not where I'm going. That you can go to any medical website and find out that this is in your brain right now as we're talking. But when you realize what part of this brain and what it does, then you start to see and things begin to make sense. The reptilian part of your brain actually controls addiction, obsession, sexual domination, fear, anger, envy, routine, ritual, ceremony, tradition, and agenda, identifying with symbols and imagery, obeying authority, discriminating, possessiveness, ownership, greed, hoarding, wealth and knowledge, competitiveness, aggression and violence, deception, and lack of empathy. Every single one of the things that we try to avoid, the things that we know turn us into mean, disgusting people. You know what I mean? If you could find a way to control that in one person, if you could take all of those things, if you could take one and you can turn that on and off in another human being, you're already halfway there. You don't have to control every single one of them, but just one of them alone. Now, just imagine all of them being controlled without you even knowing. Having those tiny, secret, silent, invisible steps happening in your brain, actually turning these things on like a switch. Movies do this, magazines do it, television does it, music does it. Everything that we surround ourselves with, the internet does it. It turns on all these little things. When that's fully on, you turn into a completely different person. And if these things remain on, there's nothing you're not capable of. If these things are switched on and off on a regular basis, you can go mad. There are people right now that are sitting in a mental institution in a nice little padded room with a straitjacket that don't understand how they got there. They don't understand how they got there. How many assassinations have happened over history where we hear of the lone gunman, some guy all of a sudden, by himself turned into Rambo. And you're like, how the hell did he pull that off? How did he pull that off? And this is when you set off these triggers. Let's say addiction and obsession. Okay? Addiction, we have people that can't seem to get themselves off of drugs, ruin their lives because of alcohol, and they don't understand. People try to convince you, oh, every time you see a beer commercial, that has nothing to do with, your drinking. How is it that somebody can watch a beer commercial and get a kick out of it and laugh at the commercial, and then somebody salivating in the corner because they see like a little drop of water going on the side of the glass? How do you take two separate people and you can give them two completely separate reactions? You can turn one into an addict and you can have one fully ignore it. And these are the people that are more susceptible to access to their reptilian brain. This is somebody who doesn't know that it exists and somebody who doesn't see it. Obsession, the same thing. We have people that kidnap others, people that do horrific things to people that they claim that they love. People that go into movie stars' homes and all kinds of shit. Obsession is it can go into any different category, but that is yet another part of the reptilian brain. We have sexual domination. There are some, and believe me, a lot of people put this under the deviance category, and to each his own, by the way. I'm not knocking that in any type of way if it's two consensual people. But if you understand that the person that's doing the dominating has that part of the reptilian brain more turned on than the other, than let's say the submissive person, then you'll be able to see it a little more clearly. That this isn't something that you just wake up, you're not born to be a dominatrix. You know what I mean? This isn't something, that this is something that's taught. This is when there's a certain part of our brain that's constantly open because we're more susceptible to other things. We have fear, anger, and envy. Fear, especially, is something that we're surrounded with. We don't have we don't have outlets to share more positive things. Everything's fear mongering. Everything's to scare the shit out of you. We have levels of security. We have the 24-hour news outlets, the papers plastered, all over the front pages all the time. Murder, kidnapping, another child abduction. We found somebody in the river. Somebody jumped off a roof. All of that sets off and turns the reptilian brain on. We got routine, ritual, ceremony, tradition, and agenda. Now, those are weird. The reason why I say that they were weird is because routine, if your reptilian brain is turned on, because of fear, and you get off on fear, like when you want to go into a haunted house, or you love scary movies, you love that boo, you love that, and you're like, you like that little adrenaline rush. That again is hitting the reptilian brain, but sometimes we get addicted to it. There's a lot of people that are interested in the subjects that I'll be discussing later on, and that I'm discussing now, and they like the doom. People are like, oh, why does everybody like, doom and gloom and doom porn? There's literally a part of their brain that's making them focus on that. For that's their scary movie. For them, that's their haunted house. Walking into there and just wondering of the possibilities of what's going to pop up next. Ceremony, tradition, and agenda, all of that stuff, falls on the line with that. Identifying with symbols and imagery. This is extremely important when it comes down to the reptilian brain. Symbolism, of course, that's what we all look at all day long. We have the M for McDonald's. We got the crown for Burger King. We got the car symbols. We have all of these things, and believe me, I will be doing a part about symbolism because it's huge. A lot of people don't understand what it means, but all of those things have another meaning. Clear in point, something that's really easy to understand when I'm saying this. M, you see the golden M, you don't think of shoes. You see the golden M, you don't think of a salad. You see that and you associate it with McDonald's. You associate it with a Big Mac. You associate it with their fries. That's how symbolism works. It's hard to explain to people, even if it's that simple, but that's how symbols work. If your brain can automatically go to looking at something, not seeing a burger, but looking at the symbol and associating it with that particular product, that is how symbolism works. And that's how imagery works. That's how it's so easy for subliminal messaging during television actually works. Obeying authority, that's something that we have to deal with on a regular basis, and that's worldwide. We have more I call them Leos, and that's a law enforcement officers that are taking their job way above and beyond what they're supposed to be doing. And right now we live in a society that we fear them. We literally fear them. But that does not make us go against what they want. If an officer comes up to you and he says, where are you going? You let him know. Clearly it's none of his business. Of course it's none of his business, by the way. He has no right to ask you where you're going. As long as you're not committing a crime or you're not doing anything against anyone at that particular moment, no one should ask you where you're going. Unless you're 5 and you still live with your mom and you're going outside. That's the only time you need to tell somebody, or your husband or your wife if you have that kind of relationship. There's certain rules to who should be asking you where you're going and what you're doing. But you will answer. You will answer because of fear. You fear that that person can take away your freedom if you don't give them the answer that they're asking you for. That right there is them turning on the reptilian brain. Discriminating. There's another part of the reptilian brain. Discriminating. We are not born racist people. We're not born against gay people. That's not part of who we are. We're not born that way. We're taught to be that way. And what bothers me is that people will go and say, I never raised my kid that way. I didn't live in a household where we hated, an ethnic group, or we hated anybody in the sexual or orientation or in this religion, and you eliminate the outside sources. Nobody's saying that if you're a racist today, it was because your parents were racist. I mean, there's a shot that they were racist, but that's not a guarantee that they were racist. TV probably taught you to be racist. Music taught you to be racist. All these other little components that eventually come together and make you who you are in the end, who you are today. We have possessiveness and ownership. That I want to say goes back into the possibility of how relationships work with a lot of people, uh, how they feel about things that that they possess, things that they say that they possess. You're mine. And no, you don't own anybody. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that in history we haven't staked that claim, but what I'm saying is that that part of our brain causes us to turn on other things like envy, anger, obsession, routine, ritual. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next one because I'm gonna tell you at the end this shit. All of it goes together. We got greed and hoarding of wealth and knowledge. The hoarding of wealth and knowledge is right there. The way the internet works, the way that the schools work, the way that we don't know our true origins. All of that is the hoarding of wealth and knowledge is understanding, and I don't want anybody to take this the wrong way, but a lot of the major businesses, and I'm not talking about entrepreneurs that start their own business, but people that actually come into wealth, did that through family. That goes down within generations. That is something that they teach within, within their own household or within their own family tree. But that means that they help those kids, eventually turn into adults that know how to turn on that reptilian brain and know how it works. That's why we have these magnificent CEOs and these huge monopolies. That is not by accident. These are not how you call it. These are not the smartest people in the world. Everybody's up Steve Jobs' ass. That has nothing to do with him being so smart he figured out the computer. The people had already come up with the computer. The computer wasn't new. The computer wasn't new. And he is not the originator, and neither was Al Gore. So when you start to realize that his business model wasn't that he came up with something revolutionary, it's that he figured out the reptilian mind. He figured out what people wanted. He ate up all the other little companies. You know what I mean? Look into the real story about how some of our biggest products today have remained what they are, and you will notice a very easy to see pattern. Very easy to see. And it goes back into greed and hoarding. We have competitiveness, aggression, and violence. That right there, self-explanatory. Deception, self-explanatory, and lack of empathy. I want to go into lack of empathy a little bit because it literally, we do not understand each other's plight. We don't understand the you know, don't say anything about anybody else's life if you've never walked in their shoes. We don't want to see that. We automatically became a society that says that if you are down on your luck and you don't have anything, or you have to be in a program, or you're trying to get your shit together, that you asked for that. Not they don't want to hear your backstory. They don't care if you lost your job. Nobody's asking you those questions. They want to know that you're in this predicament because these are the choices that you made in life, and now you have to suffer. That is the lack of empathy. We refuse to associate ourselves with others, especially if you have all the other negative parts of the reptilian brain already turned on, such as discrimination, such as ownership, greed, competitiveness. When you have all of those things and you have lack of empathy, believe me, you are straight going into maniac mode, straight maniac mode. And like I said, when you start to notice where these patterns come from, and how come every single person that has come up with a lone gunman story has previously been in an institution or had therapy before that, and it's always been some kind of a pattern. It just so happens that now a lot of our crazy lone gunmen are medicated, and we'll definitely go into that later. But like I said, this is something that unless you are able to see it for what it's worth, um, we have people not being able to stay in relationships anymore. Everybody's just, you're not good enough. I loved you just for a little while. You know what I mean? The amount of people that can't stay in a relationship is astonishing. Is astonishing. People are working themselves to death for money that it's not that you don't need money. It's that you don't need the products. If people understood their basic nature and that we need food, water, and shelter, then no, you really don't need a 15-room bedroom mansion. No, you really don't. No, that's not an absolute necessity. You're not going to die if you don't have that. You know, the divorce rate, like I said, and that's from stress and unhappiness, and that's usually out of debt, which is lack of money, which, movies and television tell you you need to have the hottest car, you need to have all of these things. Again, those are forms of control to keep your mind off of all the other things. I have a little test. Let's say the next time something big in the news happens, something like a celebrity death, or Paris Hilton's bra fell off, or whatever the hell the story is, try not to watch it. Try not to watch it, and go to C-SPAN or go to some other news website and just watch, and you will see 100 horrific things happening behind everybody's back because it's supposed to distract you. It's supposed to distract you. And what's terrifying is that we can't control kids anymore. And I don't mean control them like the way the reptilian brain controls them. I'm talking about they are, they're cursing, shooting, they're having sex at 11, doing all of these other things. And we're like, oh, I didn't raise my kid to be that way. Maybe you didn't raise your kid, period. And if that offends some people, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. When you just sit them down in front of the television, you don't pay attention. Everybody's like, oh, kids shows have ratings, and I only let them watch this channel. You're not watching the commercials. The television is there to entertain your child so that the commercials can play and your child won't move. You have to understand that. You have to understand that. It has nothing to do with the show. Nothing to do with the show. Even if a couple of the stupid things happen during the show, that's okay. But they're hoping that the parent leaves the child in front of the screen and is paying attention to the child rating. So they have like TVY, and like for ages 7 to 5 and 5 to 11. They want you to leave. They want you to leave. They want you to say, I trusted, I did my parental duty by sitting my child down and making sure that I had the parental chip and that my kid is only going to watch this. And you walk away and you don't pay attention to the commercials. And then you wonder why your kid is acting bonkers. And that's the same fucking parent that takes their kid to a therapist, that the therapist says they need to be on psychotropic drugs, and your kid's high all day. Then your kid winds up growing up and he's depressed or she's depressed. She goes and she smokes a joint, and then 5 years later she's hooked on heroin, and you want to blame the gateway drug. This is how all of that propaganda just turns itself into something more horrific. And like I said, a lot of it doesn't have to do with who you are by trying to avoid it. It's you not understanding what you truly need to avoid. If you're still walking around, if you think that you're seeing what you need to see and you have blinders on, then you don't see the whole picture. You can't. And it's made there on purpose. The reason why we have this form of stranglehold of authority, claiming to just trying to be doing the best they can for everyone, is straight bullshit. That's never been the true agenda. The agenda is to give you the at least the comfortability to say, I can take a break from looking deep down the rabbit hole because I know for a fact that somebody's doing it for me. They want you to be laid back. They want you to pay attention to all the bullshit and watch all these TV shows and all this other crap. They want that, But if you want to really see what they want your children to see, look at Miley Cyrus 10 years ago and look at Miley Cyrus today. Okay, do you think that your kid can distinguish that she is not the little kid from Disney? No, no. All your kid can know, and this is you buying the Miley Cyrus. What the hell was her name? Hannah Montana. Okay, so this is you buying the Hannah Montana sheets and buying the Hannah Montana whatchamacallit posters and the clothes and the book bags, and you're doing all this bullshit, and you're not realizing years later when you see this poor mind controlled girl, because that's what it is. Okay, it happens a lot in the entertainment industry, and it's called entertainment for a reason. It's supposed to be there with programming, and that means shows and what we're talking about today with mind control. All of that stuff comes around full circle. They want your kid to think that this is what you will become. And by the way, and I just remembered this, Hannah Montana had a split personality in her show, and still, and I sat and I watched. I have daughters of my own. My oldest is going to be 16 this year, and I did not do that. I did not do that. The worst thing I ever did with my boys when they were young was I got them Lion King shit. When the movie came out, they were twins. I mean, and I was young, so I did all this other shit. As I started seeing things and I started paying more attention, I started realizing that they were separating from me. They were associated with cartoon characters. They were associating with actors and actresses. And I was like, they'd come up with some smart ass remark. And I'm like, where the hell I know I didn't say that here. And it's because I allowed television, I allowed the school system, and I allowed indoctrination to come into my home and dictate what my children are supposed to be doing. And then you have authority figures such as teachers and principals and therapists and the police and child protective services, and they're all reinforcing that the only time you're doing something correct is when you're allowing the system to do it for you, that you cannot do it by yourself, that history somehow has shown that parents being parents has done nothing else but produce the children that we have today, the out of control kids, the bullies, and the the 13-year-old drug addicts, and kids killing their parents over video games. That because we let parents be who they are, and we allowed them to have a soul a soul relationship with them, that this is the reason why they needed to step in. Because we don't have a lick of common sense. We have enough sense to have sex and have children, but we don't have enough common sense to raise them. This is why shit is out of control. And if we don't start trying to fix it, just like I said, just the reptilian brain alone, you see everything that's happening, but we can get out of that. You can turn that off. Okay, and I don't mean the new agey way. Believe me, you can go on sites right now and put, how do I fix this? And there's a completely different way, but it pushes you. It takes that reptilian brain and it gives you, and I'll get into the cult thing later, it'll push you into the cult perspective. Because you're going to meet other people that are trying to do the same exact thing. And again, that goes back to one of the key components of ritual and ceremony and tradition. So people ignore half of the facts and don't pay attention that the other half are the new thing that's controlling you. And I have to make sure I put this in there, I don't mean that new age stuff is cult or has anything to do with cults. What I'm saying is whatever your personal thing is, that's fine. But learn how to distinguish what's turning on your reptilian brain. These are the things that right now are literally built within our genetic code, and it's built in our brains, the ones that you're using right now to listen to me talk, and what's causing me to talk. And I had to learn the hard way. I had every single one of these traits, and I still do. Please do not think that I'm saying that once you realize what they are, you can, there's a way to turn it on and off. There is, but it's up to you to do it. This is where free will really comes from. It doesn't, and by the way, I'm going to throw this little tidbit in. Reptilian has to do with reptiles, which has to do with snakes, which happens to be in the beginning of the creation story. Who's the most horrific part? You know what I mean? The snake in the garden. And like I said, over history, and I mean thousands of years, the word has always went full circle. Always went full circle. It always went back to the reptile. And when you start to connect the pieces, you start to see that they're actually talking about the one important component that makes us who we are and what truly controls free will. If you can tell TV that you know that if you could tell TV and radio and media and everybody else in their zombie like state that you control your fear, you control your anger, you control your greed, you control your lack of empathy. If you want to be that person and you know what this is, then that's who you are. That's fine. Okay, I'm not saying to go walk around and just be an asshole. There's assholes everywhere. But if you want to be a good person and you see things deteriorating around you, but you can't really figure out why. You may be an absolutely peaceful person and live with somebody who's an absolute maniac. You know, flies off the trigger, doesn't know how to hold his liquor. You know, she throws shit every time she gets mad. When you start seeing the things around you, you start realizing what is controlling that. We don't. This nature, though it's part of everything we are, it is being controlled. It is being switched on and off and on and off. And this is truly what mind control is about. Only these components. We have our artistic components, our musical components. We have all of that on the other side of our brain, and we're not taught to use that. We're not taught to use that. How many schools now have a music program? Have you seen an art class outside of kindergarten? Have you seen any place that that allows you to be expressive in a way of love, in a way of joy, in a way of community, in a way of compassion? No, they want you to be competitive. They want you to be cutthroat. There's a documentary called Human Resources. Let me tell you, that's a fucking eye opener if I've ever seen one. And it explains how corporations at the beginning saw that we would be able to work as individuals, but that would give us too much knowledge. There used to be a guy who built chairs. He built all the chairs. He had an apprentice, and he did one part, the apprentice did the other, and it would take you weeks to get an 8-piece table. Shit, it might take you months, maybe even a year to get a beautiful table because 2, 3, maybe even 4 people tops were trying to get that done. So what they did was they started giving people. They would give you the job to put the seat, the next guy next to you to do the legs, the guy over it to shellac it, the next guy. So yeah, they were able to produce more things. But if you ask the guy at the end who has to actually put the chair in the box to ship it, he has no clue how it was built. You can't make more successful people by giving too many people information. You can't. The guy about the leg, you give the guy the legs, the guy who has to do the legs, the position with the seat, and you have to teach him. He's built chairs. He tells people, I'm a chair builder. This is what I do for a living. Give him a piece of wood and tell them to build a chair. He has no fucking clue what he's doing. And that is intentional. That is on purpose. They actually have footage of how they taught fear to babies. With loud noises. Babies will grasp onto something if you put it in front of them, and they would give the babies something to grasp on, and then they would lift them up, and then they would let them go so that they could get scared, so they could be startled. Like I said, it's heartbreaking to watch, but they would get startled, and that's how you reinstill fear. They would get a puppy and they'd bring a bunny, and they would bring the bunny in, and the baby would just look at it, stare at it, and want to touch it and not be scared. And then they'd bring the baby back in and put the bunny, and then every time he went to reach the bunny, they'd hit something really, really loud and scare the shit out of the kid until he cried. And these are like the horrific things that they've done to get us to be at this point. And right now we're at each other's throats. We want to fight about religion. We want to fight about money. We want to fight about, sports teams. We want to fight about television. We want to fight about music. We don't want to find anything that gives us a reason to think that we're like anybody else. That whole individuality thing. Now, I'm not saying we're not all individuals. We're absolutely individuals. You can't really get two people that like the exact same things 100% of the time. It's impossible. It's impossible. But if you show them that things like love instead of competitiveness, they can have together, and then you have right there. That's a whole new life. That's a whole new thing. You can share it with your kids. You could share it with your spouse or your loved one or your partner. You can share it with whoever you want to. But right now, we are being infiltrated in the worst way. And we're spreading it and we're making it worse. We're not sharing any kind of knowledge with anybody else. And this is another reason why I wanted to do this. Once you begin to understand that we have this basic want and need, okay, this basic want and need, there's an old myth that we're all born as two people, and then eventually we're separated and we look for that soulmate, we look for that companion. We're creatures of habit, but we're also, we can't be by ourselves too long. We want to be accepted in the group. We're made, I want to say we're made that way. We're not made that way, but you get what I'm saying. We're connected that way, we happen to do more when we have more in common. And the same way that if I like to plant trees and you like to plant trees, we go together, we plant more trees. Same way if I hate this person and you hate this person, we come together and we hate more people. Same way it works in a positive sense is the same way that it works in a negative sense. All you have to do is look around you and see how much stuff is positive and how much is truly negative. And it will scare the shit out of you. Watch television and try to find a channel that's just about love. Try to find a channel that's just about peace. Just for people to share. You're not going to find a channel like that. 200, 300, 500 channels. You can't find a damn thing on TV that is telling you be together, hope, love. We got the feed the kids thing. We know that's not where the money is going. And even when we want to do something nice, it turns into something ugly because we don't have enough people that want to work together to make something beautiful, to share together. Yeah, hold my hand. I love it when I see people outside and they have like a little sign on them that says hugs for free. People look at you like you're fucking nuts. I'm dying to do that, by the way. I might give it a shot one day if I have enough beers. But I always wanted to do something like that, and just see the reaction that people give you. We would rather wear a sign on us to say the world is going to end. And we got people like the Westboro Baptist Church that are saying, you're all going to die. And we rather watch the news, from the heartfelt story of a puppy in a well to the last massive shooting. We'll watch that shit with our eyes glued to it all day. It's not like anything positive is going to come out of it. But we just want to watch the disaster. You want to see, the car crash. You want to see the car crashing, and then you want to actually watch as it unfolds with death and decay. And it's because we're taught that way. We're taught that way. How many videos right now you can click and see a YouTube video of somebody dead on the street, and people walk right past it. People walk right past it. And people just don't want to help. We don't have compassion, and we don't give a shit. And I'm trying to explain that this is part of who we are because we are taught. We are not born this way. We are taught to be this way. I have another part coming up. Thank you for your patience so far. I really hope that you're getting something from this. Just please stick around. I'll be right back.